objects and also as things that really are filled with meaning, and that we give back meaning to them, and so like by owning them and by reading them. So I guess that's not the question, but the setup for wondering whether or not you can talk about maybe just some books that you've talked about before pulled in, but is there anything else that you would say is maybe like really significant or sentimental?
I was thinking that I would, when we had talked about this before, I knew as soon as you said the question, I thought, oh, I'm taking historic materials. And then the other book that really just first popped into my head that I would take with it is Heidegger's Being in Time, because it was such an important book for me in undergrad, and it really just it's why I went to graduate school. It's that book and I worked so hard reading that book. Like, you really got to work hard at being in time. There's like it's crazy notes on the page. Like, it was an effort to get through that. And so I feel like attached to it in terms of just the effort of actually reading it, but then also what it's meant in my life. And then I thought, oh, if I say Heidegger's Being in Time, people are going to be like, he's a Nazi. She wants to take the Nazis book. But like, if you want to bracket that part. But so for me, that feels like, I don't know, it was just an important book in my life. But I think maybe a couple of other books that I really just truly feel dedicated to are, one is a YA novel called Feed by Tobin Anderson, M.T. Anderson, and it was written in like 1999 or 2000, and it was like Tobin Anderson predicted the future, and it's chilling to read it now post Facebook. It's literally like he predicted what was going to happen with technology before it actually happened. And I love teaching it because people either love it or hate it, but everybody feels passionately about it. But I think it's one of those books. It's an amazing act of storytelling and voice. Also, it's got one of the best voices I've ever read in YA, the strongest voices. But that book is brilliant. Like, it sort of hits all those buttons for me, of just being a great story, incredible voice, but like, boy, is it smart. Like, it just makes my brain fire all over the place, and it makes me wonder about the world. So I love that book. And then just for like pure emotional pleasure, I love Anne Patchett's Bel Canto, which I just thought was beautiful, and I would like to continue to read it at different points in my life because I just enjoyed it. So I love the characters. It made me cry a lot. I feel like if I experience emotion when I'm writing, that is how I know something should stay. The stuff I hang on to most in my books that I don't let get cut, are those, like, the chapters that I wrote that made me cry. Like, I'm actually like crying when I'm writing it, or like, I like to crack myself up, but if I can't always keep the stuff that cracks me up. But like, when I experience a lot of emotion when I'm writing something, it feels like the most real thing I've written, and I feel like that's why I'm here. Like, I'm here to try to somehow convey something real in my life or something true. And I think for me, emotions are signs that you're connecting to something like really profound in you. I also think that on the subject of the abyss, like, I write to hang on to reality. Like, writing in some ways is part of how I remind myself that I'm in the world, or like I am part of a world and I have obligations to it, or like I'm grounding myself in it. And so it feels like an important, like, I guess that's going back to the therapy again, huh? We keep going around that.
It's the therapy or the philosophies.
They're both philosophies, therapies. They're all connected, I think.
I took one philosophy class in college, and I remember the teacher more than I remember. I don't think I was a good philosophy student at that point in time. She wore these like tapestries. Just like always shrouded in these like heavy, brilliant hellish kind of cloth. I don't even know if it was clothes. Maybe they were sort of like robes. Is it tapestry?
It felt when I had really great professors when I was an undergrad, and it felt like the most practical. Even though my parents were really against my philosophy major, they actually like fought it big time. They were really unhappy about it. They wanted me to be an accountant, so I'm so not. But it felt really practical. Like I felt like I am figuring out the world and how to be in it, and this feels like a very practical thing to do. So it felt really grounded, and it felt really important studying philosophy, like in the best way. Like it was important for us to figure out why we're all here and how this all works, and so this is one way to do it, and this is how I'm finding my way in the world. So.
Were your parents accountants?
No.
Or financially minded?
My dad is really good with numbers. My parents are first generation Americans, and I think that is where they definitely were of the sort of immigrant mindset of, I want to give my daughter what I did not have, and what I did not have is a sure job. Like I didn't have a practical enterprise, or I had to scramble to get that, and so they wanted, it was a very practical, like I was good at math. I was good at math. I got that from my dad. So I was good at math. Everybody needs accountants. You will always have a job. So college was not about ideas. It was about putting myself in a position that they didn't get to have. And so, and then I took up what they thought was the least practical thing I could do. And if I had actually, it's funny because my father, who has never read any of my books, which is fine, if I had set out to be a writer, he would have freaked out, just like he freaked out when I became a philosophy major. But he loves that I'm a writer because I keep doing it. It's actually a living for me. And so he gets really excited about when my books come out, and even though he doesn't read them, like, so he's excited in a different way for them. Like he collects them, and he'll show them to you if you come to his house, and he'll drag you to the part of the bookstore where they are if you're in a bookstore, but he won't know anything about what they're about because he won't have even read the back, but he'll know they're there. So but he's very excited about writing because he can count how many books I've written, and because I keep doing them, and he sees the practicality of it in my life. But if I had ever set out to be a writer, like back in the day, if I hadn't accidentally become a writer, he would have been really against it.
Is there anything that we've talked about that you want to like talk about more, or that you want to clarify, or like something you like were hoping that I would ask you that I haven't asked you, or like?
We have talked about a lot. This is always my last question for all my interviews, by the way. So when I do, well, yeah, like, is there anything we haven't talked about? So I think maybe the sort of the way we separate out emotional, literary, intellectual, therapy, like, so, my background, I did a lot of work in gender studies. So my dissertation was on postmodern feminist philosophy of religion. So French feminism, which is like Sisu, I don't know, all these people that, they're kind of like reading Heidegger and Foucault, and I mean, I like that sort of thing. They're like a puzzle. So, and they tend to be very extreme in the kinds of things they write. So, for example, a big book that featured into my dissertation is called Speculum of the Other Woman. So, by Luce Irigaray. So that's the kind of feminism we're talking about. But they're just brilliant philosophical minds. But anyway, in basic feminism boot camp, you spend time looking at the binaries we have in life. Like the rational, the emotional, or the intellectual, the emotional. And public, private, and all of that, and you can just go on down the line, and man, woman, and somehow the emotional or the therapeutic tends to fall on the bottom end of that binary, because it's a hierarchy. The binary they're not side by side; it's a hierarchy. So, and and then like the literary or the intellectual is on the top. And I don't really, a lot of the feminist enterprise is critiquing and then breaking down those boundaries and showing how that like it shouldn't be a hierarchy, that these things it's more complicated than that. And so I guess I would want to say that I think it's, part of what's wonderful about writing and about novels and literature and the things that we do is that there is a space for all kinds of ways of writing. There's a place for it. There's a role of it, I guess. And so I think there's nothing wrong with the emotional on the page, or that we can ask the biggest, most important philosophical questions in all sorts of different spheres. And I think that they can come in a novel that's full of grief that makes you weep just as much as they can, like in Heidegger's Being in Time, or in something that wins like the Pulitzer. So I don't know that one is better than the other. And I guess I feel grateful that writing has been, and philosophy has been therapeutic for me. Like, I feel like it's nice. It's also, sometimes I don't need to feel emotional. I don't want to be writing. I don't want writing to provoke all this stuff. I just want to feel nothing. And but I do think that that's fine, I guess. There's nothing wrong with it. If I was a man saying this, I'd be lauded, but I'm a woman saying this, so I have to defend it. That's how it works. When a man writes about domestic issues in a novel, he wins awards. When a woman does, she gets a pink cover.
It's similar. I was just thinking of like when like the heterosexual actors get praised for being brave, right? For playing like gay characters, right? As if, right, like a man writing something that's domestic is sort of, it is brave and emotional, but like for a woman, it's sort of news, right? That of course it's what she should be doing.
Because it's how you're made.
In the same way that somehow, portraying any kind of otherness is brave or risky or I'm with you.
But I do feel like that's important to say, since we've been so therapeutic about this whole conversation.
I think it's something that doesn't get talked about directly in that way. Like, I think there's the idea of, okay, well, there's an institution, or there are institutions, and then there are people who fight against those institutions, or who are radically opposed to those institutions, because you can't just be regularly opposed to something, it seems like. Which would leave in mind with sort of the person in the center saying, right, like, if you're opposed to this, you're sort of radical or an outsider. But again, I think people know that. Just don't know how much it gets. I don't think it gets said enough, I guess.
Well, I wonder, when I was talking about how sometimes I cry when I'm writing something, I'm sure there are people who will think, well, of course you do. You're a girl and you're writing. But I wonder if a man said that. Like, sometimes I cry when I'm writing, and people will be like, oh, wow. So, because people don't associate. Not always. We're stereotyping, of course, but that's sort of, that happens. So, yeah. I don't know. But I guess I almost feel nervous sometimes admitting that when I talk about why I write or why philosophy interests me, it sounds a lot like, it sounds like therapeutic or cathartic, and I think that's true, but I also feel nervous admitting that, I think, because we tend to discount those sorts of things, I guess, as less intellectual or less rational and worthy. But for me, I guess the intellectual enterprise and the emotional one are closely connected, and that's part of what makes them exciting, I guess. when you feel passion around something, because otherwise it's all just dry. And then I don't think I would like it as much. I like to feel things when I'm reading them and when I'm writing them.